This will be a book reading. This will be an excerpt from a book from one of my favourite authors, David Gemmell, from the book Legend. Dross sucked in the savage splendour of the mountains, sucking in the cool breeze and tasting life as if for the last time. "Where are you, Death?" he called. "Where do you hide on this fine day?" The echoes boomed around the valleys. Death, 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 death. "I am Dross, and I defy you." A shadow fell across Dross's eyes. The sun died in the heavens, and the mountains receded into mist. Pain clamped his mighty chest, soul deep, and he almost fell. "Proud mortal," hissed a sibilant voice through the veils of agony. "I never sought you. You have hunted me through these long, lonely years. Stay on this mountain, and I guarantee you 2 more years. Your muscles will atrophy, your brain will sink into dotage. You will bloat, old man, and I will come when you beg it." Prologue. The Draenei herald waited nervously outside the great doors of the throne room, flanked by 2 Nadar guards who stared ahead, slanted eyes fixing on the bronze eagle emblazoned on the dark wood. He licked dry lips with a dry tongue and adjusted his purple cape around his bony shoulders. He had been so confident in the council chamber at the Draenei 600 miles south when Albalan asked him to undertake this delicate mission, a journey to distant Glothagar, to ratify the treaties made with Ulrich, lord of the Nadar tribes. Bartilius had helped to draft treaties in the past, and twice had been present at talks in western Vargaria and South Mashapar. All men understood the value of trade and the necessity to avoid such costly undertakings as war. Ulrich would be no exception. True, he had sacked the nations of the northern plain, but then they had bled his people dry over centuries with their taxes and raids. They had sown the seeds of their own destruction. Not so the Draenei. They had always treated the Nadar with tact and courtesy. Albalan himself had twice visited Ulrich in his northern tent city and had been royally received. But Bartilius had been shocked at the devastation of Glothagar. That the vast gates had been sundered was no surprise, but many of the defenders had been subsequently mutilated. The square within the main keep boasted a small mound of human hands. Bartilius shivered and wrenched his mind from memory. For 3 days they had kept him waiting, but they had been courteous, even kind. He adjusted his cape again, aware that his lean, angular frame did little justice to the herald's garb. Taking a linen cloth from his belt, he wiped the sweat from his bald head. His wife constantly warned him that his head shone like a dazzling whenever he grew nervous. It was an observation he would have preferred left unspoken. He slid a glance at the guard to his right, suppressing a shudder. The man was shorter than he, wearing a spiked helm, fringed with goatskin. He wore a lacquered wooden breastplate and carried a serrated spear. The face was flat and cruel, the eyes dark and slanted. If Bartilius ever needed a man to cut off someone's hand, he glanced to his left, and he wished he hadn't, for the other guard was looking at him. He felt like a rabbit beneath a plunging hawk and hastily returned his gaze to the bronze eagle on the door. Mercifully, the wait ended and the doors swung open. Taking a deep breath, Bartilius marched inside. The room was long, 20 marble pillars supporting the fresco ceiling. Each pillar carried a burning torch which cast gaunt, dancing shadows to the walls beyond, and by each pillar stood a Nadar guard bearing a spear. Eyes fixed firmly ahead, Bartilius marched the 50 paces to the throne on the marble dais. Upon it sat Ulrich, warlord of the north. He was not tall, but he radiated power, and as Bartilius moved into the centre of the room, he was struck by the sheer dynamism of the man. He had high cheekbones and midnight hair of the Nadar, but his slanted eyes were violet and striking. The face was swarthy, and a trident beard creating a demonic appearance which had belied by the warmth of the man's smile. But what impressed Bartilius most was that the Nadar lord was wearing a white Draenei robe, embroidered with Alban's family crest, a golden horse rearing above a silver crown. The herald bowed deeply. "My lord, I bring you the greetings of Lord Alban, elected leader of the Draenei people." Ulrich nodded in return, waving a hand for him to continue. "My Lord Alban congratulates you on your magnificent victory against the rebels of the Golokadar, and hopes that with the horrors of war now behind you, you will be able to consider the new treaties and trade agreements he discussed with you during his most enjoyable stay last spring. I have here a letter from Lord Alban, and also the treaties and agreements." Bartilius stepped forward, presenting 3 scrolls. Ulrich took them, placing them gently on the floor beside the throne. "Thank you, Bartilius," he said. "Tell me, is there truly fear among the Draenei that my army will march on Drostelnock?" "You jest, my lord." "Not at all," Ulrich said, his voice deep and resonant. "Traders tell me there is a great discussion in Draenei." "Idle gossip merely," said Bartilius. "I helped to draft the agreements myself, and if I can be of any help with the more complex passages, I would consider it a pleasure to assist you." "No, I am sure they are in order," said Ulrich. "But you do realize my shaman, Nosta Khan, must examine the omens. A primitive custom, I know, but I'm sure you understand." "Of course, such things are a matter of tradition," said Bartilius. Ulrich clapped his hands twice, and from the shadows to the left came a wizened old man in dirty goatskin tunic. Under his skinny right arm he carried a white chicken, and in his left hand was a wide, shallow wooden bowl. Ulrich stood as he approached, holding out his hands and taking the chicken by the neck and the legs. Slowly, Ulrich raised it above his head. Then, as Bartelius' eyes widened in horror, he lowered the bird and bit through its neck, tearing the head from its body. The wings flapped madly, and blood gushed and splattered, drenching the right robe. Ulrich held the quivering carcass over the bowl, watching as the last of its lifeblood stained the wood. Nostikhan waited until the last drop oozed from the flesh and then lifted the bowl to his lips. He looked up at Ulrich and shook his head. The warlord tossed the bird aside and slowly removed the white robe. Beneath it, he wore a black breastplate and a belted sword. From beside the throne, he lifted the war helm of black steel, fringed with silver fox fur, and placed it on his head. He wiped his bloody mouth on the Draenei robes and carelessly tossed it towards Bartelius. The herald looked down at the blood-covered cloth at his feet. "I am afraid the omens are not pleasant," said Ulrich. Chapter 1. Rek was drunk. Not enough to matter, but enough not to matter, he thought. Staring at the ruby wine casting blood shadows in the lead crystal glass, a log fire in the hearth warmed his back, the smoke stinging his eyes, the acrid smell of it mixing with the odour of unwashed bodies, forgotten meals, and musty, damp clothing. A lantern flame danced briefly in the icy wind as a shaft of cold air brushed the room. Then it was gone as a newcomer slammed shut the wooden door, muttering his apologies to the crowded inn. Conversation, which had died in the sudden blast of frosty air, now resumed. A dozen voices from different groups merging into a babble of meaningless sounds. Rek sipped his wine. He shivered as someone laughed. The sound was as cold as the winter wind beating against the wooden walls. Like someone walking over your grave, he thought. He pulled his blue cloak more tightly about his shoulders. He did not need to be able to hear the words to know the topic of every conversation. It had been the same for a few days. War. Such a little word, such depth of agony. Blood, death, conquest, starvation, plague, and horror. More laughter burst upon the room. "Barbarians!" roared a voice above the babble. "Easy meat for Draenei lancers." More laughter. Rex stared at the crystal goblet, so beautiful, so fragile. Crafted with care, even love, multifaceted like a gossamer diamond. He lifted the crystal close to his face, seeing a dozen eyes reflected there, and each accused. For a second, he wanted to crush the glass into fragments, destroy the eyes and the accusation, but he did not. "I am not a fool," he told himself, "not yet." Horeb, the innkeeper, wiped his thick fingers on a towel and cast a tired, yet wary eye over the crowd, alert for trouble. ready to step in with a word and a smile before a snarl and a fist became necessary. War. What was it about the prospect of such bloody enterprises that reduced men to the level of animals? Some of the drinkers, most in fact, were well known to Horeb. Many were familiar men, family men, farmers, traders, artists, all were friendly. Most were compassionate, trustworthy, even kindly. And here they were talking about death and glory, ready to thrash or slay any suspected Nadar sympathies. The Nadar, even the name spoke of contempt. But they'll learn, he thought sadly. Oh, how they'll learn. Horeb's eyes scanned the large room, warming as they lighted upon his daughters who were clearing tables and delivering tankards. Tiny Dory, blushing beneath her freckles at some rabid jest. Bessa, the image of her mother, tall and fair. Nessa, fat and plain and loved by all, soon to marry the baker's apprentice Norvis. Good girls, gifts of joy. Then his gaze fell upon the tall figure in the blue cloak, seated by the window. Damn you, Rek, snap out of it, he muttered, knowing the man would never hear him. Horeb turned away, cursed, then removed his leather apron and grasped a half-empty jug of ale and a tankard. As an afterthought, he opened a small cupboard and removed a bottle of port he'd been saving for Nessa's wedding. A problem shared is a problem doubled, he said, squeezing into the seat opposite Rek. A friend in need is a friend to be avoided, Rek countered, accepting the bottle and refilling his glass. I knew a general once, he said, staring at the wine, twirling the glass slowly with his long fingers. Never lost a battle, never won one either. How so? Asked Horeb. You know the answer, I've told you before. I have a bad memory. Anyway, I like to listen to you tell stories. How could he never lose and never win? He surrendered whenever threatened, said Rek. Clever, huh? How come men followed him if he never won? Because he never lost, neither did they. Would you have followed him? Asked Horeb. I don't follow anyone anymore, least of all generals. Rek turned his head, listening to the interweaving chatter. He closed his eyes, concentrating. Listen to them, he said softly. Listen to their talk of glory. They don't know any better, Rek, my friend. They haven't seen it, tasted it. Crows like a black plague, black cloud over a battlefield, feasting on dead man's eyes. Foxes jerking at severed tendons, worms. Stop it, damn you. I don't need reminding. Well, I'm damned if I'll go. When's Nessa getting married? In 3 days, answered Horeb. He's a good boy. He'll look after her. Keeps baking her cakes. She'll be like a tub before long. One way or another, said Rek with a wink. Indeed, yes, answered Horeb, grinning broadly. The men sat in their own silence, allowing the noise to wash over them, each drinking and thinking, secure within their circle of two. After a while, Rek leaned forward. The first attack will be at Drosdelnock, he said. Do you know they've only 10,000 men there? I heard it was less than that. Albion's been cutting back on the regulars and concentrating on militia. Still, there's 6 high walls and a strong keep, and Delnar's no fool. He was at the Battle of Scaun. Really? Said Rek. I heard that was 1 man against 10,000 hurling mountains on the foe. Huh, the saga of Dross the legend, said Horeb, deepening his voice. The tale of the giant whose eyes were death and whose axe was terror. Gather round, children, and keep from the shadows, lest the evil lurks as I tell my tale. You bastard, said Rek. That used to terrify me. You knew him, didn't you? The legend, I mean. A long time ago. They say he's dead. If not, he must be over 60. We were in 3 campaigns together, but I only spoke to him twice. I saw him in action once, though. Was he good? Asked Rekt. Awesome. It was just before Scaun and the defeat of the Immortals. Just a skirmish, really. Yes, he was very good. You're not terribly strong on detail, Horeb. You want me to sound like the rest of these fools, jabbering about war and death and slaying? No, said Rek, draining his wine. No, I don't. You know me, don't you? Enough to like you regardless. Regardless of what? Regardless of the fact that you don't like yourself. On the contrary, said Rek, pouring a fresh glass, I like myself well enough. It's just that I know myself better than most people. You know, Rek, sometimes I think you ask too much of yourself. No, I ask very little. I know my weaknesses. It's a funny thing about weakness, said Horeb. Most people will tell you they know their weakness. When asked, they tell you. Well, for one thing, I'm overgenerous. Come on then, list yours if you must. For what's an innkeeper for? Well, for one thing, I'm overgenerous, especially to innkeepers. Horeb shook his head, smiled, and lapsed into silence. Too intelligent to be a hero, too frightened to be a coward, he thought. He watched his friend empty his glass, lift it to his face and peer at his own fragmented image. For a moment, Horeb thought he would smash it. Such had been the anger on Rek's flushed face. Then the younger man gently returned the goblet to the wooden table. I'm not a fool, he said, softly. He stiffened as he realized he had spoken aloud. Damn, he said, the drink finally got to me. Let me give you a hand to your room, offered Horeb. Is there a candle lit? Asked Rekt, swaying in his seat. Of course. You won't let it go out on me, will you? Not keen on the dark. Not frightened, you understand. I just don't like it. I won't let it go out, Rek. Trust me. I trust you. I rescued you, didn't I, remember? I remember. Give me your arm and I'll guide you to the stairs. This way. That's good. 1 foot in front of the other. I didn't hesitate. Straight in with my sword raised, didn't I? Yes. No, I didn't. I stood for 2 minutes shaking and you got cut. But you still came in, Rek. Don't you see? It doesn't matter about the cut. You still rescued me. It matters to me. Is there a candle in my room? Behind him was the fortress, grim and grey, outlined in flame and smoke. The sounds of battle filled his ears, and he ran, heart pounding, his breathing ragged. He glanced behind him. The fortress was close, closer than it had been. Ahead were the green hills sheltering the Centurion plain. They shimmered and they retreated before him, taunting him with their tranquility. He ran faster. A shadow fell across him. The gates of the fortress opened. He strained against the force pulling him back. He cried and begged. But the gates closed, and he was back at the center of the battle, a bloody sword in a shaking hand. He awoke, eyes wide, nostrils flared, the beginning of a scream swelling in his lungs. A soft hand stroked his face, and gentle words soothed him. His eyes focused. Dawn was nearing. The pink light of a virgin day piercing the ice on the inside of the bedroom window. He rolled over. You were troubled in the night, Bessa told him, her hand stroking his brow. He smiled, pulled the goose-down quilt over his shoulder, and drew her to him under the covers. I'm not troubled now, said Rek. How could I be? The warmth of her body aroused him, and his fingers caressed her back. Not today, she said, kissing him lightly on the forehead and pulling away. She threw back the quilt, shivered and ran across the room, gathering her clothes. It's cold, she said, colder than yesterday. It's warm in here, he offered, raising himself to watch her dress. She blew him a kiss. You're fine to romp with, Rek, but I'll have no children by you. Now get out of that bed. We've a party of travellers coming in this morning, and the room is let. You're a beautiful woman, Bessa. If I had any sense, I'd marry you. Then it's a good job you have none, for I'd turn you down and your ego would never stand it. I'm looking for someone more solid. Her smile took the sting from her words, almost. The door opened and Horror bustled in, bearing a copper tray containing bread, cheese, and a tankard. How's the head? He asked, placing the tray on the wooden table by the bed. Fine, said Rek. Is that orange juice? It is, and it will cost you, dear. Nessa wailed the Vagarian trader as he left the ship. She waited an hour and risked frostbite just to get oranges for you. I don't think you're worth it. True, smiled Rek. Sad, but true. Are you really heading south today? Asked Bessa, as Rek sipped his fruit juice. He nodded. You're a fool. I thought you'd had enough of Raynard. I'll avoid him. Are my clothes cleaned? Dory spent hours on them, said Bessa. And for what? So you can get them filthy in Graven Forest? That's not the point. One should always look one's best when leaving a city. He glanced at the tray. I can't face the cheese. Doesn't matter, said Horror. It's still on the bill. In that case, I'll force myself to eat it. Any other travellers today? There's a spice caravan heading for Lantria that will go through Graven. 20 men, well armed. They're taking the circular route south and west. There's a woman travelling alone, but she's already left, said Horror. Lastly, there's a group of pilgrims, but they don't leave until tomorrow. A woman? Not quite, said Bessa, but almost. Now, girl, said Horror, smiling broadly, it's not like you to be catty. A tall girl with a fine horse, and she's armed. I could have travelled with her, said Rek. It might have made the journey more pleasant. And she could have protected you from Reynard, said Bessa. She looked the part. Now come on, Ragnak. Get dressed. I've not the time to sit here and watch you breakfast like a lord. You've caused enough chaos in this house. I can't get up while you're here, protested Rag. It wouldn't be decent. You idiot, she said, gathered up the tray. Get him up, father, or else he'll lie there all day. She's right, Rag, said Horrib, as the door closed behind her. It's time for you to move, and knowing how long it takes you to prepare your public appearance, I think I'll leave you to get on with it. One must look one's best. When leaving a city, I know. That's what you always say, Rag. I'll see you downstairs. Once alone, Rek's manner changed, the laughter lines about his eyes easing into the marks of tension. Sorrow, almost. The Draenei were finished as a world power. Ulrich and the Nadar tribes had already begun their march upon Draenei, and they would ride into the cities of the plains on rivers of blood. Should every Draenei warrior kill 30 tribesmen, still there would be hundreds of thousands left. The world was changing, and Rek was running out of places to hide. He thought of Horrib and his daughters. For 600 years, Draenei race had stamped civilization on a world ill-suited to it. They had conquered savagely, taught wisely, and in the main ruled well. But they had arrived at their sunset, and a new empire was waiting, ready to rise from the blood and the ashes of the old. He thought again of Horrib and laughed. Whatever happens, there is one old man who will survive, he thought. Even the Nadar need good inns. And the daughters? How would they fare when the hordes burst in the city gates? Bloody images flooded his mind. Damn, he shouted, rolling from the bed to push open an ice-sealed window. The winter wind had struck his bed-warmed body, snatching his mind back to the reality of today and the long ride south. He crossed to the bench on which the clothes had been laid out and swiftly dressed. The white woolen undershirt and the blue hose were gifts from the gentle Dory. The tunic with gold embroidered collar, a legacy of better days in Bulgaria. The reversed sheepskin jerkin and gold ties, a present from Horrib, and the thigh-length doeskin boots were a surprise gift from a wary traveller at an outland inn. He must have been surprised, thought Rek, remembering the thrill of the fear and excitement as he had crept into a man's room to steal them only a month since. By the wardrobe stood a full-length bronze mirror, where Rek took a long look at his reflection. He saw a tall man with shoulder-length brown hair and a well-trimmed moustache, cutting a fine figure in his stolen boots. He looped his baldric over his head and placed his long sword in the black and silver sheath. What a hero, he told his reflection, a cynical smile on his lip. What a gem of a hero. He drew the sword and parried and thrust at the air, one eye on his reflection. The wrist was still supple, the grasp sure. Whatever you are not, he told himself, you are a swordsman. From the sill by the window he took the silver circlet talisman, his good luck charm since he stole it from a brothel in Lentra. Placed it on his forehead, sweeping his dark hair back over his ears. You may not actually be magnificent, he told his reflection, but by all the gods in Messiah you look it. The eyes smiled back at him. Don't you mock me, Ragnak, wanderer, he said. Throwing his cloak over his arm, he strolled downstairs to the long room, casting an eye over the early crowd. Horror hailed him by the bar. "Now that's more like it, Rec, my lad," he said, leaning back in a mock admiration. "You could have stepped straight from one of Cerber's poems. Drink?" "No, I think I will leave it a while yet. Like 10 years. Last night's brew is still fermenting in my gut. Have you packed some of your vile food for the journey?" "Maggoty biscuits, mildewed cheese, and 2-year-old back of bacon that will come when you call it," answered Horror, "and a flask of the worst." Conversation ceased as the seer entered the inn, his faded blue habit flapping against bony legs, his quarterstaff tapping on the wood boards. Rec swallowed in disgust at the man's appearance and avoided glancing at the ruined sockets where once the man's eyes had been. The old man pushed out a hand, which the third finger was missing. "Silver for your future?" he said, his voice like a dry wind whispering through the winter branches. "Why do they do it?" "Their eyes, you mean?" "Yes, how can a man put out his eyes?" "Damned if I know, but they say it adds their visions." "Sounds about as sensible as cutting off your staff in order to aid your sex life." "It takes all sorts, Horror, old friend." Drowned by the sound of their voices, the old man hobbled nearer, hand outstretched. "Silver for your future," he intoned, and Rec turned away. "Go on, Rec," urged Horror. "See if the journey bodes well. Where's the harm?" "You pay. I will listen." Horror thrust a hand deep into the pocket of his leather apron and dropped a small silver coin into the old man's palm. "For my friend here," he said. "I know my future." The old man squatted on the wooden floor and reached into a tattered pouch, producing a fistful of sand which he sprinkled about him. And then he produced 6 knuckle bones bearing crafted runes. "They're human bones, aren't they?" whispered Horror. "So they say," answered Rec. The old man began to chant in the elder tongue, his quavering voice echoing in the silence. He threw the bones to the sandy floor, then ran his hands over the runes. "I have the truth," he said at last. "Never mind the truth, old man. Give me a tale full of golden lies and glorious maidens." "I have the truth," said the seer, as if he had not heard. "The hell with it," said Rec. "Tell me the truth, old man. Do you desire to hear it, man?" "Never mind the damn ritual. Just speak and be gone." "Steady, Rec. Steady. It's his way," said Horror. "Maybe, but he's going a long way towards spoiling my day. They never give good news anyway. The old bastard's probably going to tell me I shall catch the plague." "He wishes the truth," said Horror, following the ritual, "and he will use it wisely and well." "Indeed he does not and will not," said the seer. "But destiny must be heard. You do not wish to hear the words of your death, Ragnar the Wanderer, son of Argus, so I will withhold them. You are a man of uncertain character and only sporadic courage. You are a thief and a dreamer, and your destiny will both haunt and hunt you. You will run to avoid it, yet your steps will carry you towards it. But then, this you know, Longshanks, for you dreamt it yestereve. Is that it, old man? That meaningless garbage? Is that fair trading for a silver coin? The Earl and the legend will be together at the wall, and men shall dream and men shall die. But shall the fortress fail? The old man turned and was gone. What was your dream last night, Rek? Asked Horeb. You surely don't believe that idiocy, Horeb. What was your dream? The innkeeper persisted. I didn't dream at all. I slept like a log. Except for that bloody candle. You left it on all night, and it stank. You must be more careful. It could have started a fire. Every time I stop here, I warn you about those candles. You never listen. So that was Chapter 1 from the book, The Legend